The Real Build is about building better culture, leaders, visionaries, community to better serve the client. I'm your host, Bill Reiman, your broker builder, and I'm here to showcase real business owners building companies with integrity, trust, and a commitment to making a positive impact. Join us as we explore their stories, insights, and strategies for success. With that being said, welcome to The Real Build.
You leave this world behind, so live a life you will remember.
Welcome to The Real Build. I'm your host, Bill Reiman, your broker builder, and today I got another amazing guest, a friend of mine, a brother of mine on the show today. I'm super excited to have him on. He is the owner and founder of Kairos Coaching and Consulting. He is a veteran entrepreneur and leadership coach, professional EOS implementer, mentor, speaker, father, husband, host of the Spartan Leadership Podcast, a cigar and bourbon connoisseur, fellow Bears fan, Cubs fan, and Bulls fan too. Not that we should be bragging about that right now, but brother in the Arte Syndicate, brother in Warriors for Christ with me, and a man of faith, Josh Kosnick. Welcome to The Real Build.
Thanks, Bill. Excited to be here.
Yeah, man. Happy to have you on. Did I miss anything in that intro there? Because you're a man of many talents, so excited to have you on.
I'm sure there's something, but we'll uncover it today.
Cool, brother. Before we get started and get into the show a little bit, let's talk about you. So getting going here, who is Josh Kosnick?
Man, that's a complicated question that I think we forge over time, right? So if we ask who is anyone, what I will say that I've learned over the last few years through some trials and tribulations of my own is that we are not our titles. We are not our things. We are not our money, position, any of those things. And I had to learn that the hard way. So it's one of those things where if I'm to describe myself as anything, as follower of Christ first, husband and father second, and then of those many talents that comprise me and attributes and gifts that God has given me, those all comprise who I am. Now, leading up to like positional, what others may describe me as is a leader and coach to entrepreneurs. And, you know, the entrepreneur thing myself, been in business since I was 24 years old. Exited 3 businesses now. And those are all things that, you know, whether it's money, possessions, titles, doesn't matter. We can't take any of those with us to the next life anyhow. So I always start with that when someone asks me that question, because I just had a good buddy get unjustly and untimely terminated from a career he's poured his life into for the last decade plus. And he said to me via text, you know, that's who I was for the last 10 years, poured my heart and soul into that. I go, that's not who you were, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you can only have that through perspective and having been through some trials and tribulations yourself to understand that, you know, God gave us very unique gifts and divine gifts. And all of those comprise who we are, and all of our successes, all our failures, all of our good days and bad make up who we are, not our position, not a title, not any accolade that you'll ever receive.
I love that, man. I want you to go into that a little bit because you talked about your friend there too that really, you know, labeled himself, that business, as him, you know, and I think there's a lot of people that actually do that too. They get so engulfed into the business world, into their work world, that they kind of don't realize the outside things like you just talked about, the important things like faith, family. You know, those kind of come secondary because they're chasing the money. They think they have to have the money to have the happiness with the other things too. So go into that a little bit deeper, because I loved what you said there, and that importance of how you're putting faith and family first.
Yeah. So I learned this through my latest trial and tribulation where my third exit was not a happy exit. And no matter how it happens, some exits are great. It was just Sunday in a suite up at the Packer game, and it was I posted, "Hey, can I root for both teams to lose somehow?" Because they were playing the Vikings, they weren't playing the
Yeah.
Bears. But I was up in a suite, and this guy I had just met, and he sold his tire business, and he's out in Washington State. And I said, what are you going to do?" And he goes, I don't know. I got a year that they want me to stay on and see this transition. Uh, he goes, but I can't sit around. I said, well, how are you doing with the mental thought of not having that business anymore? And he said, I'm doing pretty good. This is something I built since I was 19 years old. And he's now about my age, mid 40s. And he said, you know, I, I'm struggling a little bit with, what do I do next? And, but at the same point, I'm really, really happy I don't have all the stressors of HR and all that different stuff. So he goes, in a sense, I'm happier. In a sense, I'm not. And we got to have a beautiful conversation. But through my transition, I realized that all my trophies, all my accolades, my position, my title, my money, none of that I can take with me.
Mm,
And none of it will be surrounding my deathbed.
mm,
But hopefully my family will. Hopefully my best friends will. Hopefully those that matter most will be there in my last moments. And so what I created in my coaching platform through this hard realization, because I think we're trained even from little, like we ask our kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I think that's the wrong question. If we could ask, who do you want to be when you grow up, that would position it a little bit better. So I created these 5 bridges and coincidentally named my leadership retreat and farm 5 Bridges Farm because we mess up the order. And all of us do this, is we skip to professional and financial and growing our empire before what matters most. And we sacrifice what matters most before that. So that's actually the 4th bridge, but I'll explain the first 3 first and why they're so important. So bridge number 1 is spiritual. You don't necessarily have to believe what Bill and I believe in Christ, but you do need to understand that our body and spirit are 2 separate entities. Every single one of us has been in a room, whether it's a funeral or a viewing, visitation, where we've seen the flesh and the spirit and soul is no longer there. So at least we understand. I think for anyone, whether they're Christian or not, can understand that our spirit is something different. So you have to get right with your spirit, no matter what that means to you first, because that is what you can ground yourself in first and foremost. Like when everything comes crashing down, like it did for me, and I have no title and I have no business and well, I did have money because of the exit, but all of those things, all those accolades, everything that you ever knew was gone. What's left? Well, hopefully your relationship with God, hopefully your relationship with your family, right? So that we have to get right spiritually. Bridge number 2 is internal. And bridge number 2, internal, being your mind, your emotional being, so your mental health, your emotional health, your physical health. If we don't have those right, we can't show up and be our best selves to those we're trying to serve. So my goal is always to be the best hour of someone's day. I set up that intention, and like driving here, getting back home from dropping the kids off at school and being here, like turned off the radio and was very intentional about saying, hey, I want this to be the best podcast Bill's ever recorded. I want to be the best hour of his day. And every transitional meeting I go into, whether it's coaching or otherwise, I make that transition a few minutes ahead of time, say, now it's time to be the best hour of their day. And the only way I can do that, just like when flight attendants tell us to put our oxygen mask on before assisting others, is because we can't assist others if we're dead. We can't assist others if we're passed out. And that's why they tell us to put it on first. So our mind, our body, and our emotional health, we have to be selfish in taking care of that in order to be selfless and taking care of others. So
mm,
that's why internal is bridge number 2. Oh, and that there also your nutritional health, right? So that goes along with your body, your mind, and your spirit. But putting in your mouth or not putting in your mouth, like that puts a lot of pressure on us. And so I'm thankful to be married to someone that has her master's in nutrition, and we've been focused on that nutritional health a lot because our gut and our brain are very intricately designed together. And your gut health can cause a lot of mental disparity, mental health issues, stuff of that nature. And then bridge number three is relationships. So relationship with God, relationship with yourself, relationship with your spouse, relationship with your kids, and then every other relationship comes after that. And again, in business, we tend to focus on having great relationships with our business partners, our customers, stuff of that nature. And we're growing this empire, and we forget the relationships that matter most, which is again, God, spouse, kids, and then everyone else. And so those are the first three bridges, but we tend to skip over those or at least sacrifice them for the sake of getting to bridge four, which is what I call your environment, which is really professional, financial. Oh, and don't forget to be creative and play, because we all have joys. We all find joy or pleasure in stuff outside of our business. And as this hard charging type A people, we tend to sacrifice those to just build the empire. Now, there's the other side of that too, where some people play too much and don't focus on building their empire. But I doubt many of those are listening to your show. So we'll skip over those for today. So for those that are hard charging and trying to build that empire, you got to remember that you enjoy things, whether it's hunting, whether it's sports, whether I don't care if it's fantasy football, something that you enjoy outside of your work, you got to find joy in, because otherwise, what's it all for? And then you also have to set up your financial situation, not get out over your skis, not spend too much out of the business, creating an environment of health so that you can be the best business owner possible. And I was fortunate, I didn't say this, but I started my first business in the financial advisory world at 24 years old, sold my book of business to take over a large firm. So I know the financial world very well. And a lot of my coaching, I can help business owners. And I don't do the financial advising anymore, but I know about every good financial advisor across the country. So if someone tells me they need someone or would like someone to help them in that, I can point them in the right direction. But that fourth bridge is where everyone spends the majority of their time neglecting the first three bridges. But if we get that order right, we get to bridge five, which is legacy.
Hmm.
And it's, what do you want to leave behind? And I'm not talking about inheritance, although that may be a byproduct of the empire that you build. I'm talking about, what do you want to leave behind? Lessons, values, legacy. How do you want to be remembered? And that's what we should be working towards throughout building our empires, is not the most money, not the most things, but the most value and impact that we can drive throughout all of those relationships that we have in our world.
I love those, man. It's so so good. This first one too, obviously spiritual bridge too, is in my opinion too. If you're not strong in faith, you don't have somebody to go to, something to go to, God to go to, you're lost. And I've had my moments. I had one recently too. I've talked about this on the show where, I almost had basically a breakdown, just stress, everything was piling up. And talking to people like yourself, Brad, and people in the group, and, going to the people that I have in my life that are strong in faith, that's what brought me back to peace. I feel great now. I'm back. I'm like, oh, let's go. Let's get back into, I'm in a good mental state again, too. And what brought me back was prayer in the morning, sitting down, resting my mind, really just praying and talking and, talking to God. And it's such a crucial thing. So that to be number one is 100% true, especially in this business world. I mean, you know, people listening out there, obviously, if you're not a person of faith, you know, obviously Josh and I are going to be talking about it on this too. I recommend it. It got me out of a lot of problems in my life. Josh is the same way too. So that one right there is crucial. Another thing that you said though that I really love too is be the best hour throughout the day for somebody. That is so critical right there, man. Every conversation, if you have that thought in mind, like you just said, too, how powerful is that going to be just on your life in general? Whether it's with your kids, your wife, whatever, it's just, I come home from work, if I can give my wife that best time, that best hour or 2 hours or whatever it is of myself, and really focus on that and do it throughout the day with clients, customers, man, that is
Think
powerful.
about if everyone took that posture. Like if everyone in the world took the posture of being the best hour of someone's day, we'd constantly be trying to level each other up by like almost like competing against each other to be
Yeah.
the best hour of their day. And what a positive impact and ripple effect that would have throughout the world.
Huge, man. Huge. You think about that because if that's top of mind and you're going into a call, you're going into anything throughout your day, even a workout, whatever, it's just like imagine how great you will be, great you will feel on the accomplishments that you made in helping people too throughout their day. And it's like, one thing like I've been doing more recently too, and it doesn't have to be an hour. It could just be one little moment. One thing I've been doing more is if God puts somebody on my mind, I text them. I'm shooting them a text and just be like, "Hey,
Yeah,
you're
it's a
on my
God
mind."
whisper.
Yeah, yeah, and that's been huge because the response I get usually back is, "Man, I needed that today. Thank you." It's crazy, right?
That's awesome. Yeah, a lot of times they'll be like, you'll get some crazy responses, but like, man, I was thinking about you too.
Yeah, yeah,
Or, I'm actually in a dark spot right now and I really appreciate you reaching out.
yeah.
Like I've had all of those and I do the same thing. I see them as God whispers, like, hey, I actually was teaching that to a boot camp at my farm last week. When someone pops to mind, now these were all financial advisors that were coming, but like when someone pops to mind, reach out. Just say, hey, I was thinking about you. And like that means the world to them. It's almost like when we get those handwritten notes from First Form when we order a product. It's just that extra layer of touch, whether they're a client, whether they're a family member, whatever it may be. No one is ever going to be like, I can't believe you called me, and in a bad way. They're going to think of it positively, and that you were on their your mind. They were on your mind, I should say,
Mhm.
and they'll take it in a very positive note.
Those five bridges, man, they're really, really powerful too. And um, even just the internal too, being the best version of you, going into your environment too. I think a lot of people with the environment side of things, yeah, there are the ones that celebrate too much, and the business kind of goes on the back burner. But then I think and I've talked about this on the show too, is there's ones that don't celebrate enough. In an entrepreneurship, uh, a lot of us are just let's go, 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 go.
Mhm.
And we don't stop and be like, man, what an accomplishment that was. We're like, okay, what's the next accomplishment that I can get to, right? Um, what are your recommendations, for maybe taking the time as a entrepreneur, like that's just keep going, moving forward, and just stopping and celebrating those wins?
So celebrating wins, you got to have kind of guardrails, boundaries, whatever it may be. So first of all, most entrepreneurs, good ones especially, do not take the time to celebrate wins.
Hmm.
I would say that now because they're hard charging. I think the general public probably takes too much time to celebrate wins. But entrepreneurs by nature are driven to go to the next thing. And there's this great book called Positive Intelligence by Dr. Shazad Shamin. And he goes through it's part neuroscience and then part some other behavioral therapy stuff that he gets into. And it's a great read because it helps you identify where your saboteurs are mentally. And we all have them. So there's nine accomplice saboteurs and there's one master, which is the judge. And so he talks about upper brain, lower brain, and getting to our upper brain more. And one of the biggest saboteurs for most high achievers is hyperachiever. So achievement in and of itself is not a bad thing. We should be seeking achievement. But this hyperachiever tells you that you are only worthy if you achieve.
Mm.
And that keeps us from actually celebrating our wins. It's like, oh, I haven't accomplished enough. I haven't done enough. My vision is this. I haven't hit that yet. And so therefore you keep charging and not slowing down to actually find joy in the little wins that you have. So that book was a great read. So by the way, my number one saboteur is hyperachiever. And
Mm.
so I've had to learn over time that, hey, is this my hyperachiever speaking to me that I'm only worthy when God tells us that we were born divinely worthy and we are unconditionally loved. So we know if we know that to be true, then no, it's not our achievements that make us worthy.
Mm.
And so with that 24-hour rule, maybe it's a weekend, whatever it may be, find a way to find joy in the wins. If you take too long with it, then that slows down your momentum. But find a way to, in your team, by the way, this builds a lot of teamness if you can bring them into the win, whether it's throwing a bar company barbecue, whether it's going axe throwing with your team, whether it's, get them a custom pair of cowboy boots. One of my clients did that and it was amazing. Like it flew a dude in from Texas and gave him the choice of boots or belt, but all custom leather, all different stuff to celebrate the success that they had in that year. And then just think through little things like that that you can create teamness with and actually celebrate the win. Because you may not even yourself, you just want to keep going, but your team, you want to celebrate them and you want to celebrate the hard work that went into achieving whatever you just achieved. But create some guardrails, whether it's 24 hours, whether it's a weekend, or create the carrot that says after we get through this 90-day sprint and we achieve this, we're going to do X
Mm.
and put it out there for everyone.
I want to
And if
go
you're a
in.
stick,
Oh, no,
real
go
quick,
ahead.
if you're a stick person, that thrives more on that, I had this, this scenario is kind of funny. This was many years ago when Hillary was running for president, and I had a guy I was coaching that really disliked her, and so I put a target out for him that he agreed to, and I said, okay, if you don't hit this, I'm going to hold on to a check for you and it was like $1,000 to Hillary's campaign. I said, so it's already addressed. The stamp's on it. It's in the envelope. If you don't hit this, this is going in the mailbox. He hit that goal.
Wow.
So whether you got to figure out if you're a carrot or stick person to figure out how you're going to celebrate in those moments, but celebrating is important.
I wanted to go into with you too, because I know you're passionate about mental health, and a lot of guys I think are struggling out there. A lot of people, there's a lot of people mentally kind of struggling right now. I know quite a few of them, and just with the way the world is too, and things going on and so on as well. And I wanted your opinion on this is, what would you say to men that are struggling, that are hesitant to seek help, or even share their struggles too? Because I know you deal with, obviously, you and your coaching program too, you're getting men out of those struggles. So let's talk about that a little bit and the importance of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this topic and I don't love it because it's easy. It's actually a really hard topic. I love it because it's necessary.
Hmm.
And just like you mentioned with anyone that's struggling right now, you are not alone. You're typically placing yourself alone. So one of the number one traits that I see or habits that I see from men is that we tend to isolate and we think that I got to solve this myself or it's my issue and I don't want to burden someone else. And that's absolutely the worst thing you can do. If you think about it this way, people have a natural inclination to help. Think about this, our brother Jonathan, who's driving down today as we speak to North Carolina with a skid steer and 2 pallets of water because he just couldn't sit still and when we have many Americans in need. And so he's doing his small part, right? People have a natural inclination to help others, and you're choosing to isolate yourself and not give them the gift to help you in your time of need.
Mm.
So isolation and aloneness is a choice, and it's a bad one. And so, by the way, that's a number one sign. If you have a friend or a colleague or something like that that seems withdrawn, that seems just a little bit off and is kind of pulling away from relationships, they are not in a good spot, and you need to do everything in your power to get to them. So I came to this, and I'll just tell it briefly. But my father-in-law took his own life, and he was one of the greatest entrepreneurs and humans that I ever known. Deep in his faith, one of the greatest Christians I ever knew, and greatest examples of a father and man that I ever knew. But he deeply struggled with mental health and the stress of the entrepreneurship, the times of things. His own gut health was causing a lot of mental anguish, and one day he lost that battle. And so I come to this like, and it's a different grief. Like I've said this often, I'll say it again. Like I would rather receive a call from you at 3 in the morning than to ever receive a call again that you're no longer there. I don't ever want that call again.
Mm.
Now, that being said, those that are going through mental health issues typically aren't the ones that are going to reach out. Now, I'm telling you, you do need to get help, and your life is worth it, and it's worthy. Like all you do, anytime someone goes down the suicidal ideation phase, when your negative thoughts and your mental health get to suicidal ideation, your thought process is that you think the world is better without you. You think your family will be better without you. And it's absolutely untrue. But that's what your lower brain is trying to tell you. All you do, if you make that choice, if you choose to take your own life, I will tell you this from firsthand experience. All you're doing is transferring your pain to those that love you. And we get to live with that pain the rest of our lives. And so for those that are struggling right now, seek the mental health, and especially in men, there's such a taboo around seeking therapy. And even if we aren't struggling with mental health, we us as men tend to be prideful and think that seeing a therapist is a sign of weakness. No, it's a sign of strength. It's being humble enough to go, hey, I could use some help. I have these dark thoughts or these negative thoughts that are recurring, and I can't seem to figure them out myself. Well, what do we do when we can't figure things out ourselves? We ask a mentor, we ask a friend, we ask someone that's been down that road before. If we were just in business, and Bill had when you're starting your building company, like if you didn't know how to do something, you'd ask for help, right?
Mm.
If you uncovered a problem on the financial end or the marketing end or something of that nature, you'd ask for help. So why wouldn't we do that when it's our own negative thoughts? When we're struggling, like why won't we? Like it just when we break it down like that, it seems silly, but that's exactly what we all do. And so it's interesting. I'll give you a personal example. When that bad exit, when that bad instance happened 3.5 years ago, I was working with my personal coach at the time, and I tried to push him away. I said, Jason, I don't know if we need to be coaching right now because we don't have anything business to talk about. Like I'm in this legal battle, negotiating this exit. Like, what are we going to talk about? He goes, Josh, I have a feeling you're going to need me. You can choose that, but he goes, I think you're going to need me more now than ever. And he was absolutely right. Every 2 weeks we'd talk, and he'd keep me focused on what I could do next. Sometimes it was getting my workouts more regular again. Sometimes it was move the needle with the attorney. Like just little tactical things on what I could focus on next and also keep my mental health strong. And so it's just being humble enough to go, I need help. we'd ask for help in any other business situation. We got to ask for help for ourselves as well.
I I think, and one thing I just wrote down that came to my mind when you were talking about that too. I think a lot of people struggle with seeking the help because they're scared of the reactions or the feedback, possibly. The mind's more negative than it is positive. I mean, we have more negative thoughts in a day, that just plain and simple. And unfortunately, the mind actually overpowers with those negative thoughts that kind of turns people away from seeking the advice of others. It shuts them down. It's no different than in business. You fear the outcome that actually hasn't even happened yet. And most of the time it's not going to happen,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what people struggle with too, is like they're automatically thinking an outcome. Like if I was having issues and I was going to approach you, I'd be automatically thinking a negative outcome. Like Josh is going to think I'm crazy. He's going to judge me. He's going to do that. How can I ever approach Josh about this problem? Because, he just won't understand. And then you go and shelter yourself and things get worse. Those voices, everything just start going after you. And it's not, it's with everything, as far as with business too. There's a lot of mental struggle with business. And I'm constantly telling my team too, don't overthink, don't overthink it, don't overthink it, don't overthink the outcome yet. Just wait, let's see what they respond. Because it's always, he's probably going to respond negative. Like I said, most of the time they don't. If you just tell them the truth, say how it is and how it's going to be all right, and that's where I see a lot of the struggle with this, and people seeking help. Like I said, like I was kind of going through it, and I seek help from all you guys, because I know you guys have gone through it too. You've probably had breakdowns, it's just part of
Mm-hmm.
business, and what better people can I seek? But a lot of men, unfortunately, a lot of women and men don't do that because they're just like, people aren't going to understand this and that. So, what's your advice to that, as far as like getting out of that shell, that scared shell?
Yeah. So first of all, it's understanding the brain science. So if there's one thing I geek out in, it's neuroscience. So there's this little tiny part of your brain called the amygdala that rests right back here, kind of connects your spine to your brain. It's right at the bottom there. It's probably, if not the smallest, one of the smallest parts of your brain, but it magnifies negativity by 200 times. So as you're speaking to her, the brain tells us more negative thoughts than positive thoughts. That's why the amygdala's purpose is the fight or flight. And the amygdala's purpose, when we were, created, we were in real life danger from fighting saber-toothed tigers or lions, or, we were in real fight or flight scenarios. However, we're not in those scenarios very often in our life anymore. And so we're not in life or death scenarios hardly ever. And so that part of our brain really doesn't do us much justice anymore. However, it still exists. And by the way, the media figured this out a long, long time ago. And so there's a saying in media, if it bleeds, it leads. So you wonder why there's no positive news networks and it's all 24/7 cycle of negativity. It's because they know that your brain's going to magnify that negativity. And how do they drive revenue? Well, they get your eyeballs to the screen
Hmm.
and then they can sell more ad revenue. So the media figured this out a long time ago. We're slow to catch on. So now getting to what can you do about it and getting past that is, first, it's an understanding that it's natural. When you go to ask someone, you can start with, there's technology nowadays, you can even start with BetterHelp or one of these online places where there's not even a face, not even a name. You're never going to know this person. And you can start asking questions, and that may be a good spot. And then that may provoke a question or a thought to ask a friend like Bill and go, hey, have you ever dealt with this?
Hmm.
And Bill's going to go, yeah. And here's what I did. And here's what I got. That may not work for you, but this is what worked for me. and you got to kind of figure out your own path. But I think, first of all, if we're really focused on our spiritual being first, and then we focus on the internal, and we're constantly working on those, we're going to have less negative thoughts. Like my morning routine consists of exercise or hydration, then exercise, then more hydration, then prayer, then reading the word, and then reading whatever current self-development book I'm reading. And then I get ready for the day. Like I have multiple wins. I'm preparing my mind for war, right? So there's a hard rule. You don't check your phone, you don't check your email or your social media because that's like Russian roulette. You don't know if you're going to get a bad email. You don't know if you're going to see something negative on social media. So you got to prep your mind for war before you get any other inputs to your mind. And that comes through your spiritual practice and your personal practice of getting that mind ready. And I've made these mistakes before. Uh, Actually, just last year, and I'm really good at this, and I've been good at this for years. And just last year, I happened to pop open my email. I didn't mean to. I was looking at my calendar to see exactly when my first meeting was because it was a little bit off. And I happened to see a bad email, and it threw off my whole day.
Mm.
Right. So my mind wasn't ready for war. And because if my mind was ready, I would have seen that email and be like, ah, no big deal. But because my mind wasn't ready for war, it threw off my whole day. And that's what I'm thinking about instead of getting internally better and right with God and all those different things that I typically do on a morning practice.
That is so good, man. I think, once again, a lot of people go straight to the phone. They go straight to the social media. They go straight to the things that aren't preparing the mind for war. And going straight to social media in the morning and scrolling while you're laying in bed before you get out of bed, you know, you're going to get pissed off by something. There's so much crap on social media. I'm sorry. I mean, it's just something's going to pop off. It's going to piss you off. And then there you go. Your mind's in a bad place right from the very beginning. And so not having the phone near you, keeping the phone away, and just doing these things that you said to kind of prepare for the day, can really help too, because I've been there. I've had the email that came in too, and it just really just set my day down. Went for a downward spiral. It's like one thing, and then it led to another, then another, then another, because your mind's looking for those things too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how powerful it is. One thing I heard this morning too, because when I work out, I usually like have Ed Milet or somebody educational on the TV or something with faith. They were saying like 100% of the actual negative thoughts that go through your mind usually aren't true if you just sit back and justify those thoughts. If you actually look at if you're intentional with that moment, so you have that negative thought, you say, why am I having this negative thought? And you really look into, is this negative thought true? Most of the time it's not true. It's just something that your mind put out there that, and then you justify that negative thought of why it isn't true, and you can get through it too. But that takes a lot of practice of catching those moments, like, as they come, and that can create a lot of positivity, or like you said, make your mind ready for war.
Yeah. Well, you know that a neurosurgeon's never extracted a thought from a brain.
Mm,
If you were a neurosurgeon and you dissected a brain, you could not find a thought.
yeah.
Couldn't find it. They don't exist inside the brain. Right. So that's our spirit or soul that's talking to us.
Yeah.
Right. So John Gordon says it pretty eloquently. We got to stop listening to ourselves and start talking to ourselves. And so also understanding that science is like thoughts we have on average, the average human has over 60,000 thoughts per day, and over 90% of those are recurring.
Mm,
So what happens is like new learnings, new inputs, stuff of that nature. Like if you're getting positive inputs, positive learning like Ed Milet, like those are going to create new thoughts, but the 90% are coming from recurring records and experiences that you've had over your life. So have you ever heard the phrase bad things happen in threes?
mhm.
Yeah, I think we've all heard it. Well, is that true? I don't think so.
No.
But we end up manifesting it like that day you said you got a bad email and another bad thing, another bad thing. Like we end up manifesting that because we're looking for it instead of looking for the good things. We're like, oh, that was just an isolated instance. That has nothing to do with the rest of the day. And I'm going to go win the day regardless of what happened with that bad instance.
Hmm.
But we attach ourselves to the thought where bad things happen in threes. So this one bad thing happened, and now we're looking for two more to happen. And so we got to understand that our brains, it's like thoughts are like clouds in the sky. They pass through, and you decide which one you're going to pull down and attach to.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, because it's like the whole thing, the one thing after the other too. It's like you have that bad email, like you said, then you get in a car, then traffic's slow, or somebody cuts you off, or somebody, just aggravates you while you're driving. Easy to do here in Naples, Florida. A lot of slow drivers. A lot of old people on the road. So it's just then you're looking for that, then you get to the office and something else happens or a problem happens when usually that problem would happen if it would happen if you didn't start your day in that negative place and that problem would still happen. It would still occur, like something happens at a client's house. Let's use that for an example. That's going to happen regardless, right? But you're already in that negative mindset from the beginning that you're just like, well, when it rains it pours,
Mm-hmm.
and then you get into that mindset and then it's like what's going to happen to me next, and then it's a trickle effect too, and it's like we just said too, it's like if you just stop and think and you're like, okay, some bad habit, we're going to fix it, we're going to take care of it. Most of the time it's going to get taken care of too. Like I've had bad emails come in, they just come off bad. I call the customer because I'm very, I'll rather call you than email you because emails always come off in a bad way anyway. I call the customer and he's happy. He's asking me how my son is. He's asking me how my weekend was. I'm like, you just sent this email that was so bad, sounded like you wanted to cuss me out, and now you're talking to me about my family and friend, and life. It's just like usually things aren't that bad or as bad as they seem to be, and
Yeah.
it's spot on what you said there.
Yeah. So there's this great, profound work by Byron Katie, a female author. And so to your point on the questions, so she calls it the work, and it involves asking four simple questions about the belief that causes us pain.
Mm,
So, is it true? Can you absolutely know that it's true? How do you react when you believe the thought? Who would you be without the thought?
mm, yeah.
And then after answering the questions, you're asked to do a turnaround sentence, essentially the opposite of that negative thought. And then you list out all the reasons that the opposite could be just as true, not more true, just as true, right? And then you kind of go through it again. Can you justify this one? Like, is this true? How do you react when you believe this new positive thought? Who would you be with this positive thought? And you start to adjust, or justify that the positive thought is just as true, and that you feel more powerful in that positive thought than that negative thought.
Mm,
So you can actually Google "The Work" by Byron Katie, and you get that whole framework.
yeah,
And it
I'm
takes
done.
a little practice. It takes a little practice, but if you get good at it, it may not take you minutes anymore. It could take you seconds to just flip that thought.
And I think that goes back to what we talked about earlier too, is trying to catch those thoughts and learning to catch in the moment, like, why am I having this thought? Questioning it for once, because a lot of the times we have thoughts, we don't question them because we go and we're moving and just life is fast. It comes at us quick too. And it goes, not, it goes further than that too, because your thoughts provoke other things too. I mean, this can be in your marriage, this can be raised as a father, this can be in so many directions too of, like stop an argument with your spouse, you know, and
Yeah.
because you're thinking like, what is the point of this? Why is there even an argument? Why am I pissed off right now? Why am I even pissed off? And I think a lot of people don't do that. They don't stop in the moment and question those thoughts that are coming in too, and be like, this is the dumbest thing ever. Why are we even fighting? You know,
Yeah. Is it going to matter 5 years from now? If not,
exactly.
let it go.
Exactly. Exactly. I wanted to talk to you to one thing you said, and I'm big on leadership too. And this was a big one. The challenge. Your journey in leadership began pretty early in your life too, obviously with sports and everything. So when did you realize leadership was more about serving others rather than yourself? That's one thing that you said, and it stuck out to me too, because that's such a crucial thing in life and the business world and marriage as fathers, as husbands, everything in life, that there's people that make things all about them, especially in business and so on too. But then your employees are kind of getting pushed to the side too. I've changed my whole business model too. It's all about my employees. It's all about what can I do to make them happy. I ask them every team meeting, like, what do you guys need? What do you need from us
Yeah.
to work better? So talk about that a
Yeah.
little bit.
So I was never the hardest, or I'm sorry, the most talented athlete, but I did work the hardest. I knew that I had to make up for some shortcomings with speed, or when I was a wide receiver, was blessed to play a little in college, and but I had to do that through effort because there were some that were just more talented than me. And so I learned through that people are enamored with those that go the extra mile and those that lead by example. And so I learned that early on. However, I'll tell you, there was one instance in my career, and I leaned into that, and I've always been enamored with great leaders and wanted to be one myself, and learn what it took to be a great leader, from John Maxwell to Jim Collins to all these different authors. Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, is one of my favorite books of all time. Uh, very enamored with that type of reading. That being said, in my personal career, ran my financial advisory practice, was also leading and recruiting other advisors. And at age 30, I recruited someone that kind of flipped my paradigm. So I always wanted to recruit someone that I could run with and compete with. Never once did I think that I'd recruit someone that would absolutely kick my ass. And being the competitive person that I am, they would, it really challenged, my thought process. And so for the first 2 years, I was, out producing him. Third year, he just blew by me. And never once did I feel envious or jealous. I only felt joy and pride. And that was the moment I knew I was meant to be a leader,
Mm.
because I had seen others that in that exact same scenario become jealous and prideful and envious and do some weird things to try and undercut that person's success that they were supposed to be leading. And so and by the way, whether if you're in sales or a competitive field, not everyone's cut out to be a leader. If you're one that finds that you are so competitive that you get envious or jealous of those that are beating you or slightly better than you, don't go into leadership. Just keep producing. Keep doing what you're great at. Don't let management come down and say, hey, you should be a leader or a manager, when you know in your heart of hearts that you're not going to be able to serve others the way leaders need to. Just go produce, do your thing, make lots of money. And I've also seen this in examples. I had a client who was a business owner doing very, very well. They were selling these really large backup generators to major buildings and companies. And his top salesperson, the way they had the comp structured, was doing really well, and he was helping the company grow. And there was a point where that top salesperson was out earning the owner, and the owner got really weird because he played D1 college football and had all this ego about him. End up firing the top salesperson and tanking his company's value. This company would have soared to 50 million in value. And after that top salesperson was terminated because of the owner's ego, they sold at 5 million. He settled. And I still don't know that he learned the lesson at all. I think that honestly, he is probably still prideful and probably takes a lot of pride in selling the company for 5 million and not telling anyone that he could have sold it for 50 had he just hung on to my friend and let him do what he was doing. Because the friend had no equity either. That was the craziest part. The owner had all the equity and he's growing this machine and helping him grow it and getting paid handsomely to do it. But the owner's ego got in the way.
Wow.
And so you really have to understand your own personal preferences because not everyone's cut out to be a leader. And if you're a great salesperson, go be that. But if you find more joy, and this is what happened for me, is instead of building my own practice and continuing to build that machine, I found more joy in developing others like that advisor that I recruited that started kicking my ass. I was finding more joy in helping others develop their dreams. And so I leaned more into leadership. And so it's about finding where your joy comes from instead of being, well, you're a top salesperson, so we're going to promote you to management. It may sound good, but that also comes with a great deal of responsibility, right? The notoriety is not there. The other thing that I did in my large organization when I had 250 people working with me is I flipped the org chart completely upside down. So we all have these org charts in EOS, we call them accountability charts because it's not a vertical ladder to climb.
Mhm.
We want the right people in the right seats. Um, Org charts are what most people know. And it's like this pyramid, right? So you have the CEO at the top, and then you have the vice presidents or the other CEO or the other C-suite leaders, and then it kind of goes down from there. Well, who are you in business for? Your clients, right? Whether you're in the financial advisory world, whether you're in the construction business, whatever it may be. And I got sick of the notion of who reports to who. And this question that kept coming up, and I'm like, first of all, as a visionary leader, I don't want anyone reporting to me because I'm not good at holding people accountable. I can become competent in it, and I had to. But as soon as I realized that wasn't my joyful skill set or my unique ability, I delegated that to someone that it was really good at. By the way, Steve Jobs was terrible at that as well, and that's why he got fired from Apple to begin with because he was known as an asshole. Well, that's because he was trying to be integrator and visionary. When he came back, Steve Wozniak was there and he became the integrator so Jobs could work in his unique genius, which was the visionary. So I flipped the whole org chart upside down and I said, I serve the integrator serves the C suite serves the advisors, and the advisors serve the clients, and that's who it's all about. So this is a service model, not a who reports to who model.
Love that, man. Because I was actually going to bring that up as you were talking too. Ego leadership versus building leaders among leaders, right? If you lead with the ego, more than likely you're going to end up like that one guy that could have sold a company for 50 million. Instead, he sold it for five, and he's got an ego and he's bragging about the five, and he's always going to be that way. And you're stalling yourself basically. You're stalling at your true potential versus building leaders among leaders. And I always talk about that in our team meetings too. Like everybody here is a leader. We're building leaders within this business so that you guys can lead other people too. It's from the bottom up. It's not the top down, like you said. And it it gives your team too, like it's so critical to your team because they don't just feel like an employee. They feel a part of something. They feel part of that vision of the business and the company too. And it's so crucial and important that they are a part of it. we don't build these. We can't do what we're doing building houses without my team. It'd be a cluster. It would literally be, it would just chaos. And you know, teaching these guys and girls that, they are such a critical role within the company and they can, and teaching them leadership and how to become leaders in the future too. They see that. They see there's more for them too. Because in construction, there's not always a lot more. You have your superintendents, you have your project managers, and what's after that. But if you can be a project manager that leads a bunch of superintendents, that leads a bunch of laborers, that leads, and it goes and goes and goes, and you're constantly building up and you're building your own side, and the vision is being built too within the company. It goes so far. So you're so right on that right there, man. It's like, that's why I wanted to talk to you about leadership because I know it's big with you too. It's huge with me. So I love that. I love everything you just said there.
Yeah, and it's about finding the right people for the right seat. So again, if we use accountability chart versus org chart, my chief development officer, when I had my company at 250 people, and my chief marketing officer made more than my integrator, even though they were reporting to the integrator. So it's a horizontal ladder, not a vertical ladder. It's getting people in their unique geniuses where they love the work that they're doing and they're uniquely gifted at it.
Mm,
That doesn't mean that this seat over here, if sales is driving everything or marketing is driving, a portion of that, doesn't mean that they don't deserve a bigger piece of the pie. Because if they're driving that revenue, we need to compensate them more, right? So it's not, we got to forget the traditional org chart where I'm climbing this ladder to make more. It's about where do I find the most joy and where did God put my gifts? And I'm going to sit in that seat
mm.
because I know that for the rest of my career, I'm going to love with the work that I do and be compensated appropriately for it.
What you just said there, where did God put my gifts? That's so huge. Because I think there's entrepreneurs out there that try and tackle everything and they're not good at everything. They
None
don't.
of us are good at everything.
Yeah, true.
It's just knowing that.
Yeah, yeah. Go. I want to wrap this up because this is important to both of us too, and this I know will impact a lot of listeners too. Your faith and how where your faith has gotten you today, where you see it taking you later on in life, the importance of it with your business, with just life in general. Let's just wrap up with that because you mentioned
Yeah.
God. We just ended where did God put me in this, so let's talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah. So going off the gifts thing, God gave us each unique gifts. And I believe it's our job to find out what those gifts are and then see how deep they go. And they go infinitely deep, deeper than you ever thought. And then our job is to give them back to the world in the service of others.
Hmm.
So our job first is to find out what they are, then see how deep they go. And that'll be a lifetime process. But our real job is to give them back to the world in the service of others. And so if we can identify and then give back, that's what God wants from us. But how it plays into everything, like when you're in your pits of despair, which I've been in, I know you've been in, like others listening today have probably been in some pits. It's like when everything else is removed, and whether you have family yet or not, like there's one constant, and that's God. I love the footprints in the sand poem where, the guy thinks that God abandoned him because he only saw one set of footprints in the stand. And God leans down to him and says, those were mine. I was carrying you.
Hmm.
And there's been times in my life where he absolutely carried me. There's no way I'd be here before you today without him. And so it's understanding that relationship and how much we are unconditionally loved. I did this exercise because a lot of people, a lot of men struggle with worth because we're constantly placing our worth on earthly things, stuff that we've achieved or accomplished. And so I had this group of men that I'm still coaching, but this was earlier this year that I had them do this exercise. I said, whether you believe in God or not, I just want you to go to the Bible and look for all the places that God tells you about your worth. I said, some of you could even chat GPT this. I would cross reference to make sure that it's accurate, but you can certainly do that and take the easy way out. And then we just did this exercise of what does God say about you? What does God think about you? How much does God love you? Does it say anything about the achievements, the business that you build? None of it did. And so if you can lean on that and what God thinks of you, even when you don't think that of yourself, it starts to put that inkling of hope in you to go, well, if I have this supreme being that thinks this about me, who am I to think less of me than he does?
Mm.
Do I think I'm more knowledgeable, all knowing, or powerful than him? I would hope not. I'd hope we have enough humility to know that. And so it's a lifetime thing. It's a lifelong process of growing that relationship. I just think that so few of us actually lean into it on a daily basis and pray without ceasing and get quiet enough to hear those God whispers that you and I were talking about earlier. So I'll leave the listeners with one tactical takeaway as it pertains to this. Every business owner, every high achiever should have what we call in EOS language clarity breaks. And this can be an hour a week. It could be bi-weekly, monthly. I would suggest at least monthly. But if you can get to weekly, I think it's really powerful. And it could be just 1 hour. You cannot be in the house or your office. Those are the rules. You got to find a happy spot where your mind can be clear and quiet. Now, whether that's a coffee shop, a park bench, a mountain spot, wherever your happy spot is, go there in your highest thought process time. For me, that's around 10 a.m. I'm caffeinated, I'm exercised, I'm hydrated, my mind's fully functioning around 10 a.m. That's when I'm at my best. So that was my time on Friday mornings at 10 a.m. And so how this is really tactical is, let's say I had to fire someone at 9 a.m. on Tuesday, but at 10 a.m., I got to recruit someone or mentor someone. Well, that 10 a.m. deserves my best. So I don't have time to process the thoughts or emotions from terminating someone I cared about at 9 a.m. However, I just wrote myself a mental permission slip that, hey, I don't have time to deal with this now. So I got to compartmentalize so I can be the best for that 10 a.m. But I do have time on my calendar to deal with it on Friday. So it was like, if I haven't dealt with those thoughts or those emotions by Friday at 10 a.m., I already have that time scheduled. So I'm not just brushing this under the rug. I'm not brushing these emotions under the rug, because we know when we do that, we're going to trip over that rug and blow up on someone else that didn't deserve it sometime down the road. So I'm not doing that. I'm giving myself a mental permission slip where I have that clarity break. Now, the other, like, let's say you don't have a bad instance, like I just mentioned, you can think through, I've had this recurring negative thought. Where do I want my vision to go with my business? Ask you, like, am I making things more complicated than they should be? Like, asking yourselves these questions in clear thought where you can pray or you can just be alone in your own thoughts to really get some clarity, taking time out of the business to work on your business or time out of your life to work on your life. Those clarity breaks are super powerful, and I suggest everyone employ them immediately and hold them like you're going to the doctor. Most people don't reschedule their doctor's appointments because it's so hard to get into the doctor. So treat that appointment time, that clarity break time, like it's your most important client showing up or you're going to a doctor's appointment. Like, don't move it.
That's huge, man. Huge to end on that too. Because I think we all struggle with that. We all need those clarity breaks. I mean, we need to take the time to get that clarity, to sit in a silent place where it's not craziness constantly because we're surrounded by it. I mean, have one of these and it's just
Yeah.
constantly going, it's just constantly going off. But brother, this was unbelievable. I knew it was going to be, and I am definitely. I mean, I didn't even get into US with you. I want to get into that, so I'm gonna have to have you
We
back
can do that another
on.
time. We can do a whole episode on EOS. I
Yeah.
know a lot of the business owners would be curious. But if they want to reach out to me, joshkosnick.com or any of my social media, just at Josh Kosnick. I happen to have great SEO because I don't know any other Josh Kosnick. So I'm pretty easy to find LinkedIn, Instagram, otherwise, and be happy to talk about EOS, coaching, mental health, any of the different stuff. My goal is to inspire and impact. So I don't seek followers for followership. I don't like it, the right people are around me that are meant to be impacted by me, and that's I'd rather be an impactor than an influencer.
I have no doubt you're going to continue to do that, man. Me knowing you and getting to know you over the last couple of years, just in Warriors for Christ, the things you're doing are amazing. And I know there's much more big things ahead with you too, brother. So glad to be in your circle. Honored to have you on today, too. This was awesome. And I know you're going to help quite a few people with this episode.
Yeah, honored to be here, brother. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. And everybody listening, thank you all for listening. Go check out Josh. Like, share, comment. Please share this. Friends and family goes a long way. You guys have been doing a great job with that. 5-star reviews. You're doing a great job with that too. Appreciate that. And we will see you guys on the next episode.